Hi, this is Reginald Perryman with regiusrealestate.com, and I have a special guest today, attorney Christina Jeter. And we're going to talk today about a few things. We're going to talk about probate, estates, wills, trusts, and power of attorney. Christina, can you introduce yourself and tell the people a little bit about your background?
Sure. I am Christina Jeter, Esquire, principal attorney of the Jeter Law Firm. I am licensed in 4 jurisdictions currently, that being Michigan, New Jersey, New York, and Washington, D.C. I have an extensive background when it comes to government administration. I actually grew up in the funeral business, so estate planning is near and dear to me.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yes.
All right. So today I want to cover a few things. So first, let's talk about probate, because some people have concerns. They're planning now to try to avoid probate, or they're going to prepare a will, or they're dealing with probate after the fact. Someone just passed and maybe they own a home and have other assets, and now they're forced to go to court. So can you explain some things about how to avoid probate, what people should do to prepare so that their family is not scattered after the fact, and how to prepare for that in advance?
Sure. So one of the things people need to keep in mind is that many people are not going to avoid probate entirely. So you have a lot of people, they have those discussions with their friends and family members, and they don't know. So they go around and they say, I want to avoid probate, not understanding what it all really means. So just keep in mind that probate isn't going to be avoided entirely in many jurisdictions. Now, with that out of the way, there are some things that can be done for asset protection and wealth protection for people's families, and it can mitigate what has to happen through the probate courts. Some of those protections, it includes, some people, they hear about trust and they think, well, let me have this trust in place in lieu of a will. That may not be what they really need, but a trust is an option. Another thing that comes up for a lot of people is they will have certain types of accounts, retirement accounts. They may have certain contracts that have to be paid out to them, etc. That falls outside the scope of probate if they have their beneficiaries named.
Okay.
So those are just some considerations that people should take into account. Now, generally speaking, a lot of people do not like to talk about probate. They don't like to talk about probate. They don't like to talk about estate planning in general. When I was in law school, I was actually one of the student attorneys in the estate planning clinic. And one of the challenges that we ran into is that you would schedule the appointments with the clients and they would back out. They would just not show up, because to them, if they began to discuss any type of estate planning measures, it meant that they were going to die soon. And that's not what it really is about. So when you talk about estate planning and probate, it's not about death. It is about assets, and it is about life.
Okay. So let's talk about, because one of the things when I talk to people in general, people say, well, I'm not going to, prepare a will. I don't own much, or the only thing I have is this house. And you touched on it too, about like retirement accounts. What about maybe pensions? You may have an IRA account and things of that nature.
Yes.
Is there a certain point, or who should be planning their estate, regardless of their income level? When do you think the best time is to plan for your estate?
To me, I would say when a person becomes an adult and they're out on their own in some capacity, some people think out on your own means you've moved out of the house. You may have a thriving business just out the gate at 18. There's certain things that it depends on each individual. But I truly believe that once a person becomes an adult, it's something that they should think about, kind of like paying taxes.
Right. Okay. All right. So can you explain what a trust is, and the different types of trusts, and what are trusts used for?
So I'll keep it somewhat high level. So a trust acts as its own entity, so to speak. And what that means is we have someone who is going to put some type of an asset or multiple assets into this trust, that being what we call the settlor, or the person who's donating the assets to that trust. Then from there, you have a trustee, the person who's responsible for making sure that the terms of the trust are carried out and they have fiduciary duties to the people who are supposed to benefit, the beneficiaries, from the trust itself. Now, generally speaking, you have a revocable trust, and that's the type of trust that a lot of people would want to go with. And the reason for that is because with the revocable trust, it's pretty much in the name. You can revoke it if you choose to. So if you change your mind about something, you're free to make whatever changes you deem necessary. An irrevocable trust, on the other hand, is a little bit different, because once it's set, it's set. So if you're the one who you're putting the assets into this trust, you don't get to go in and change things around just because you feel like it. So that's not really what you want to do. Now, with a trust, there's quite a bit that you can do with a trust. There are a number of individuals where they have multiple real estate holdings, and so they may utilize a trust. That way it can just go from one person, or really from the trust, to their beneficiaries. You could have certain types of monetary accounts. They could be investment accounts, outright investment accounts, and they want the money to flow through there. I have even had people ask me questions about lottery winning, and I have suggested putting those lottery winnings into a trust and just having that money issued out to individuals, similar to an annuity. So it's an annuity payment out of the trust. So there's a lot that you can do with a trust. It's just people need to understand that a trust can work in tandem with other types of documents.
Okay. So it sounds like, just what I'm hearing, it sounds like a trust can be, you can kind of compare it to a company, right? Because you mentioned that it's its own entity. So you set up this trust and you give the trust directions on where the funds should go, where the assets should go, how everything should be managed, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. That sounds good. And it doesn't, you don't have to be a millionaire to have a trust. You can just own maybe just your home and have a few dollars in the bank and have a trust set up.
Yes.
Okay.
You very well could. Now, something else to keep in mind with trust, and it still ties into asset protection. You can have a trust created for minors. And that's a lot of times what people are thinking about. They have children and they say, I need to get my documents updated. I want to establish a trust. That way my child or my children are taken care of if we die before they're adults. And that's okay. Even with adults, though, you can have certain provisions in a trust to provide some type of protections. So one of the things that tends to come up, and it's in various cases in a number of jurisdictions, is you will have someone who has debt creditors, and they are trying to attach their judgments to whatever benefit they're supposed to get from this trust. You can have a trust established and set up in such a way that it protects any benefit coming out of that trust from any kind of a debt payment that is owed, etc. There's just certain things that people do need to keep in mind. So as people are going through life and those life changes come up, if they think, hey, I want to really keep this trust in place for my children, and as they're growing up and you see maybe certain individuals are making certain decisions in a way that you may not agree with, or you think it might cause the challenge, even though that challenge won't last forever, provisions can be put into the trust to take care of that.
All right, so let me understand this. So let's say I have life insurance and say it's a $500,000 or $1 million policy, and I have 3 kids, and I'm going to leave this money to them, but I don't want them to get it all at once. I can set up a trust so that the life insurance funds go into the trust, and I can set it up so that there's distributions like maybe every 2 years to each child.
That is possible, yes.
Okay. So if one of my kids just have bad credit, they're bad with money, and everybody's chasing them for money, there's garnishments and everything, that money from the trust can still be protected?
It could be. Now, there's some nuances that come up, but it could be, generally
Okay.
speaking.
All right. So it's a way to yeah, I mean that sounds, I mean that's simple enough. It's a way to protect your assets, and there's different ways to protect the assets that you're going to pass along to your children or other family members.
Yes.
Okay. Because technically it's not the kids' money yet, it's the money that's in the trust, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. Sounds great. Let's talk about a little bit about power of attorney. So I see it often in real estate where someone is signing on behalf of maybe the seller. The seller is out of state. They give someone power of attorney to sign documents for them. But there's also a use for power of attorney documents in medical situations, right?
Yes.
Okay. Can you
So,
explain that?
sure. So when it comes to a power of attorney for medical needs, if I am drafting those types of documents, I make the distinction and actually refer to it as a medical directive. So in that medical directive, the individual can choose a particular person to act on their behalf if they have to have any type of medical decisions made when they're unable to. It can be a situation where they are completely incapacitated. They may be heavily medicated. A lot of times it can be emergency. Someone goes in for surgery and something happens. They are sedated on the table, and the doctor comes out and says, okay, we have these two options. What do you want to do? Medical directive can actually spell that out. Something that is important that comes up with the medical directive is what do you want to have happen in certain situations. So getting to the emergency situation, there's some people where they don't want anything to be done. If it looks like things are just going south, they would just rather leave the earth. There are other individuals where they want you to do everything possible to keep them alive. Then you get into, well, if you are kept alive, what type of care would you like? Would you like palliative care? Would you just like to be made comfortable? Do you want to be experimented on? Do you want to be subjected to any kind of medical trials? Those are some of the things that can be covered in a medical directive. And for some people who go in for surgeries, they may have already experienced the question of, do you have a power of attorney for your medical needs? And in that situation, when they say they don't, a lot of times surgery centers and hospitals say, hey, we have this form for you to fill out.
Okay. So at that point, you're kind of just depending on the whatever facility you're in or the hospital to make the decision.
Not so much. So
Okay.
what happens is when you fill out the form, they're basically having you create this medical directive or power of attorney document on the spot
Okay.
without any time for you to think about it. Now, if you're in a situation where that form doesn't come out, that's just not how the hospital operates, then they will try to locate next of kin to make that decision. But what happens, which is why it's always best to have some type of a medical director or power of attorney for your medical needs in place, is they contact the next of kin and it is a high emotional situation. So that next of kin doesn't want to be the one responsible to decide, do we actually stop life support or anything like that? Because then your life is in their hands. So you can spell out what your wishes are in that particular legal document, and then they can just go from there. Something else that comes up too is you can choose more than one person. And what I mean by that is you don't have to choose two people to work at the same time. If you have a person who you have assigned to follow your wishes and make the decisions for you, if they are unable to do so, you can always have someone who is named as an alternate. Because sometimes the first person you chose, when they get into the situation, it really just becomes overwhelming and they may need to rely on the help of your alternate person.
Right. Okay. So because when I talk to people about like estate planning and power of attorney and trust, it's always kind of based around death, right? But
Yes,
it sounds like it can also be planning your life, because in some situations, this may save your life depending on who you're giving that authority to, correct?
exactly.
Okay,
Exactly. My take on it is it's a little different. Some would say somewhat unorthodox, but I really have the vantage point of it being more so about what happens for life, not
right.
just.
Okay. So because the struggle too is always with one of the things we notice too is with planning like your estate and everything, we run across issues where sometimes um, the tax benefits and breaks may not align with what's in the best interest of the estate overall from a legal perspective. So we
Yes.
run into that a lot too. So dealing with probate or with trust, do you see any like advantages tax wise that you would recommend? Because we're seeing people like they're going into court, they're coming out owing like inheritance tax and things of that nature. What are some of the benefits that you see um, having a trust in place to help with tax breaks and things of that nature?
So having a trust in place can help when it comes with some of the tax consequences that comes up, but
Okay,
it depends. I know that's the standard attorney answer. It depends.
right,
It's a case by case situation, but something people do need to keep in mind is you may very well need to work with a CPA to make sure that what you have and what you're going to administer for your family later, it benefits to the highest capacity possible for anyone who's going to benefit from that. So if that means you have a trust, if that means for Michigan you have a ladybird deed, if that means you don't gift all of the money away and then people are subject to all types of gift tax consequences,
right,
then that's just what needs to happen. But with everyone's situation being different, the advice of a CPA along with the advice of a licensed attorney, it can be very beneficial. And some of the tax consequences they can change. The Internal Revenue Code it's a beast. To say it's a challenge is an understatement. It is a beast. And I'm not a tax attorney, but when those types of questions come up, I am sure to reach out to tax attorneys and CPAs just to double check.
okay. And just real quickly, you mentioned gift tax, and this is something a lot of people are not aware of. I think
Yes.
some of your lottery winners are they understand it after the fact. But can you quickly explain what gift tax is?
So a gift tax is a tax burden that is going to be attached to any type of dollar amount. So the monetary value of a gift. If it goes above a certain dollar, then it is subject to gift tax. And so you mentioning the lottery winners. Sometimes they start writing checks to friends and family and they'll say, hey, here's $1 million. Okay. But now that $1 million is subject to gift tax because you gave it to them as a gift, but it's over $15,000. And each jurisdiction may have other tax rules at the state level that needs to be taken into account as well, sometimes the city level too.
Right,
But gift tax, it eats up the gift for a lot of people.
right. So there's a proper way to give money, and then there's a way to plan to give money.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
And that kind of explains why a lot of lottery winners go broke, because there's no plan in place on how they're going to distribute this money or even give it away. Because if everyone's
Right.
paying taxes on gifts, then it's kind of like, wow, where did the money go?
Right. And the lottery winnings, that's always the hypothetical question. And it's one of those things where if someone really were to have that winning lottery ticket, they typically have a year before they have to claim anything. Over the course of that year, they could be getting things in place. That way there is a full plan and it can operate once they begin to collect.
Right. Okay. So, So is there anything that you think, because again, when we talk about probates, estate planning, trust, wills, and everything, is there anything that you can just recommend? I'm the average person, maybe I'm working a 9 to 5, I don't have a business, maybe married or not married, have kids. What would you suggest the first step is?
So the first step would be to really think through what it is they own or have access to.
Okay.
Because a lot of people think, I don't have much. That's typically what you hear. I really don't have much. I'm not a millionaire. I don't really own anything. So there's no need for me to even think about any of this. But many times people have more than what they think. And so it's really going through first to just think through what it is you own and what you have access to. And what I mean by what do you have access to, could you potentially be a beneficiary from someone else's estate? Or is there something else that may be coming up? You may not have a business now, but you may have a business idea. And that will come into the fold at some point too. So that would be the first step. From there, they may decide they're ready to get just basic estate planning documents in place. So even if they were not ready to go through and establish a will per se, they may want to go ahead and get their medical directive in place and a power of attorney document. That power of attorney would be if they needed someone to go to the bank for them, act on their behalf, those types of things. They
Right.
may start there. Then from there, they might decide, okay, I'm ready to draft a will or get a trust in place. In Michigan, there is such a thing as a Lady Bird deed, and that is essentially, it's an enhanced life estate. So they may want to get that in place. There are a number of things, even for people with what some would consider small estates, to be thinking about and getting into place.
Okay. All right. And one thing I learned in my life is usually better to pay an attorney to help you prepare than pay an attorney to solve a situation. Because
Yes,
um, trying to fix it is a lot more expensive than preparing for it. Um,
it is.
so so basically what you're saying is at least sit down with someone, an attorney, to kind of plan out where you at in life and maybe where you want to be at in life maybe 20 years from now. And it sounds like one of the most important things to have is, you said, the medical directive.
Yes. Some
Okay.
people still refer to it as a power of attorney, but I separate those. So I have a medical directive, and then there's a power of attorney
Right.
for like your finance needs and those types of things.
Okay. And I often see people go to probate court for like guardianship, maybe like of a parent, an elderly parent.
Yes.
And can you explain that a little bit?
So with guardianship, you have a situation where someone else, there's an adult, they're going into court and they are petitioning the court to be able to act on behalf of this particular individual. So you have guardianship for adults a lot of times. You mentioned those who are elderly. You can also have guardianship that comes up for minors.
Right.
That does come up too. So you have that. The guardianship is really, I'm going to essentially be responsible for this individual. I am their guardian. I make their decisions, and that's how it goes. In Michigan, you have guardianship and conservatorship. Some other jurisdictions is only guardianship, but essentially it all means the same thing. I'm going to be responsible, make sure bills are paid,
Okay.
etc.
Okay. And that's something, because we see it a lot too. So we see where someone is taking care of maybe their parent, one of their parents that has dementia or something like that, and they have to go in, they have to handle all the bank accounts, all their maybe social security benefits, all of their needs, whether they're putting them in a nursing home or they're going to remain at home with some assistance. But then on the other side of that, if there's any type, if someone passes away, then everyone is just seems like they're just scrambling to put everything together. And that's
Right.
why I really wanted to kind of talk to you so we can explain to people that you don't have to be a millionaire. You don't have to have all these assets. At least sit down, whether you're of age where you need to start planning or you're taking care of maybe like your parents. It's a lot easier if you're grieving, but if you're grieving and you're dealing with the stress of trying to figure things out with an estate, it just makes it that much harder. Um,
Yes.
so, so we talked about trust, wills, probate, guardianship, and is there anything else that you might want to add that I missed that we should consider thinking about in our midlife years? the
Oh,
35 to maybe 45, 50-year old.
exactly, exactly. And that's a big part of my target market.
Okay.
So something that people need to keep in mind is when they begin on their estate planning path, there's this thought, and it comes from a lot of people where essentially, kind of like the infomercial, you set it and forget it.
Right.
That's what they do. And people should not do that. You really shouldn't do that. So just because you have your estate planning documents in place, it doesn't mean that you don't go back regularly to make sure that they're updated. So for people who are younger, they may decide looking at things every 5 years and updating is okay. 5 years may still be a stretch because life happens very fast. So looking at everything annually or even every 2 years might be of benefit to people. You might realize that there's something that you need to change. You have some people, they have a child or they have another child and they get so busy raising their children they forgot to add, the new baby to everything. There's a lot that can happen. So just looking at those documents regularly to make sure everything is up to date, knowing that if you do have to make changes, it can happen.
Right.
And the big takeaway to me and a lot of people in my network is you have a lot of issues coming up now where people are relying on online forms,
Mm-hmm.
and they're kind of the catch-all forms, and they say, hey, this is a living trust, you just fill it out and print it out, or here's a will or a living will, fill it out, print it out, and you're good to go. And it can cause issues because, for example, a will in Michigan, you can refer to a list and have a list attached, but that won't work if you're in New York because the laws for that jurisdiction, they're different. So I know there are a lot of people, they think, oh, it's just cheaper for me to, get this form online and I'll do it myself. That's not always the case. It's not always the case at all. Now, if you've done that or you're thinking about it, it doesn't mean you can't speak to an attorney. That way you can get proper legal advice. But those just mass online forms, it is causing all kinds of problems.
Right.
For a number of bar associations, they're even addressing a lot of the issues that are coming up because it turns into a snowball effect,
Mm-hmm.
and money has to get spent even more. You mentioned it earlier. It costs more for us to fix problems than for us to make sure we've covered as much as we possibly can.
Right. And because one of the things we see in real estate is that online forms work until you get sued, right? So
Exactly.
they're
Right.
good when there's no issues, everybody agree, but I don't know if I would want to trust online forms to, nothing against the companies that do it, but I don't know if I would want to trust certain documents to help me prepare for my estate and my kids' future. So um,
Right.
so that's good you brought that up as well, because we see it in all, whether it's real estate, we see legal forms and things of that nature, and they just don't have. And then you mentioned too, whether it's with the forms or just looking at reviewing your estate plans every 5 years or every year, laws
Mm-hmm.
change per state.
Yeah. Yes.
That form may work this year, but next year it can be, it can be null and void depending on what clauses you have. So it's good to review those things as well. And some of these online platforms are not updating their documents. They're just mass selling them out to the public.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right, good. All right. Well, I want to thank you. I hope this, helps helps my clients and some of yours, of course, but just wanted to kind of get the word out there to a lot of people are going to be dealing with guardianship, probate issues, and things of that nature, especially now. Where can people contact you? And do you have a website, social media, or anything like that?
Yes. So the website is thejeterlawfirm.com. We're also on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram.
Okay. All
So that's
right.
our online presence.
All right. And do you offer any like online services where people can consult with you online, probably via Zoom or anything?
Actually, so my law firm is a virtual law firm
Okay.
because of me being licensed in so many jurisdictions. It can't be in multiple places at one time.
Right.
So I have a virtual framework for my law firm, and we pretty much do everything online. So the consultations are online, any client meetings happen online, even document review, it happens online.
Okay. Perfect. Perfect. That's great. So I don't have to come and sit in your office with that big wooden desk.
No, that was one of the things I wanted to avoid when I actually established the firm.
Right.
It, you have people, they think, oh, I have to go and sit on the side of this huge desk and then I have to take time off of work.
Right.
We don't have to do that. Let's make sure that you are informed, you have what you need. If we have to do this at 8 p.m. in the evening, we can do that. If you're out of the country, but you're a resident here, we can do that too.
We would like to thank attorney Christina Jeter for taking the time today to discuss probate, medical power of attorney, guardianship, wills, and trusts. To learn more about the Jeter Law Firm, please visit thejeterlawfirm.com.